All right, we're back. It is COMP1004. That's Rapid Application Development here at Georgian. And it's the winter 2017 semester, and it's week 4, part 2 of our broadcast. I just wanted to mention that for additional help, last semester, I have already recorded pretty much everything that I'm doing this semester. So if you ever wanted to look ahead, some of the assignments that I detailed, that I'm going to detail again, they're almost exactly the same. There's minor modifications going to come up. But if you ever wanted to look ahead and do your videos ahead of time, or whatever, if you wanted to understand a concept that maybe you didn't get or whatever, or haven't talked about yet, everything is up there for last semester. So it'll be called, obviously, F 2016, as opposed to W 2017. If you look for those videos, they're there, as well as videos from before, right, from C# and even VB, I think I have in there, when this course used to be VB. So back in the day, this course has evolved, and most of those videos should be up there. But today we're talking about C#, and I want to talk about a couple things. Oops, too far. I'm going to bring up my Visual Studio, and what I want to do again, remember what I did last time, is I brought up from COMP1004. I looked at this last lesson, right? So, notice I have, no, that's not the one. I have my lessons from last time, right? So let me bring that up. So I'm going to bring up my Visual Studio. Please forgive me for the dark theme. I changed it one place, and because I'm a Microsoft person, it changed it everywhere for me, right? It changed it on different machines, went to dark theme as opposed to light theme. It's still visible. I don't mind it. I usually make a light theme. I prefer a light theme in Visual Studio when I'm working with you guys. But sometimes lately I've been working with like really dark rooms, and a light theme just was killing me. So I went to dark theme, and that's why I did it. The dark theme? Yeah. So anyway, so if I go to open and I want to go to project or solution, I want to look for my solutions on within my system, and I want to base my new one off of my old one, right? Now I'm going to keep the calculator, but I'm going to add stuff to the calculator to make it work. I'm not going to complete the calculator for you. That's something for you to try and do with the things we've done so far. I'm going to talk about more different things. This is not it. Desktop. This is what happens when you lose. When I do marking, I get all these submissions, and all my start is wiped out. So my recent files are gone, and of course, I can't find a darn thing. Users, and it's me, and it is documents is where I put them, I believe. And we're in here, and we are in the W 2017. Last week was lesson 3, and notice there's that Git folder. Right, from lesson 3, right? And this .git folder is the invisible folder that holds my Git repository. I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to make a template. I want to show you how to make a template again, because for your exam, we're going to do a template. I'm going to give you some code, and then you're going to say, here, guys, take this code and make a template, right? And from the template, you're going to make your exam, right? And that's what we're going to do here. So what am I going to do? How do I make a template? Well, I recommend one thing. First, make sure all of your commits are up to date. In my case, I think they are. I'm going to go File, Export Template, right? And from here, and if you're someone who did with assignment 2, if you're that person who did assignment 2 and you want to make a template, right? This is the way you do that. You go to Project Templates, Next, and notice it says COMP1004 W2017 Lesson 3. I'll leave it like that for now. You can also make it more intuitive if you wanted to make it all lessons. I've already done that. So I'll leave it like this, and I click Finish. Without any other options, it's going to bring up File Explorer with the zip folder of my template, right? In this case, because I'm running a VM, it won't. It'll just bring up File Explorer, and that tells me that it's done. This is done. There we go. And then I'll just close off File Explorer and go File, and then I'm going to close my solution. My solution is closed now. And now I'm going to make a new project. I did this last week as well. New project based on my templates. I'm going to look at Visual C#, right? Click on Visual C#, scroll all the way down. Typically it's at the bottom. And it's looking like this. Typically it looks like this for Visual C#. I probably passed it. There we go. There's a bunch of different ones, right? And here's comp with lesson 3. This is the one I did. I did lesson with a calculator last time. We're just going to make it lesson 3. And you're going to rename this thing to lesson 4 today. Right? I'm going to hit this one that says create new Git repository because I want a new one, and then click OK. And what this does is going to take the files from lesson 3, rename them across all the namespaces, and then it's going to make lesson 4. All right, so we have in our dark theme here, what we have, and forgive me if you can't see anything, please let me know, and I'll just change themes again to light. We have in our Solution Explorer our project. Here's our project with lesson 4, and we already have our calculator. If I double click on the calculator, there it is. Now I want to make this a multi-form application, and there's several approaches to this thing. I want you to think about this as each one of these things, these forms, are objects or classes. How do I know this thing? Well, if you look at the program file, we did this in the first day. So for people who missed the first day, if I double click on the program file, you can see that in here. It says that we have an application object, right? Application object. And inside my application object, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys to see, and I'll hide these for now so you guys can all see it. Make it, kind of all the workspace. You can see that the application object here has a bunch of different things. So in our main, think about this as the driver program. So my program class in my project is the driver program. So in Java, it would be called program as well, right? If you're a Java person. And then you have a main, right? The main, because it's static main, right, as an example, this is a static method that we can activate or trigger without generating an object, okay? So this method is generated automatically. It's a static method. Now, question. By default, is this public or private, this whole class, right? Public or private? What's the default access modifier for this one? Does anyone remember? Anyone want to take a guess? It's either private, public, or private, typically. Man, it's incorrect. It's private, right? So that by default. So because it's private by default, if we want to share anything that we declare in here, right, we have to make this class, the class itself, where it's a static class program, we'd have to make this public. And we have to make the main public as well if we want to access anything to run that main or anything else in there. Why am I telling you this? Because one of the key ways we can start a new file, first of all, is, or to have multiple projects, is to set up my class here, and then from my other form, I'm going to create an object of that type class, right? Going forward. So let me talk about this a little bit. What do I mean when I say this kind of stuff? Let me take a look at my solution, and let's make a new form. How do I add a new form? How do you think I add a new form? And if you're someone who did VB, you'll know. How do I add a new form to my project? Write a new form, right? Remember, each form is a class of itself. It's a big container for every control. You can have multiple controls on every form. Think about a form as another level if you're playing a game, multiple levels, right? Each form is self-encapsulating. It has everything inside of it. It has its own event handling system, the whole thing, right? So how do I do it? How do I create another form? There's a few ways. Anyone have suggestions? Yes. Right-click on this, or this, okay, on the project, yes, and then add, maybe, yeah, add, and then you can do, now, this is my little shortcuts. If you've done a new form before, it may appear here, right? So Windows form, or you can go to new item. So you go to new item, add new item. It's going to bring up the new item dialog box. Here it is, and notice that down in here is form, but if you can't find it because you have a lot of items like me, you can always go to the search bar and look at form like this. So I can go form, right? And then it will filter with form. Now there's different kinds of form. I don't know if that helped me. I could also type in the whole thing like Windows, if I know what I'm looking for. Form, right? Windows form, there's only one typically, or two. And here it is, Windows form, right? Now down here is the default name, form1.cs. Typically I would change that, but we're not going to. I'm going to leave it as is so I can rename it just for you, right? So typically it's a great opportunity for renaming. And if you're making a form, you do it here. Why would you rename later when you can do it now, right? But I'm going to leave it as is and rename because make sure everyone knows. Okay, so I got a new form. It's empty. And it's the exact same thing that we normally have with any kind of form, right? But we're going to make this our splash form, right? It's going to be our splash screen. So I'm going to talk about this early because you're going to need it for assignment 3, all right, and going forward for assignment 4, for assignment 5, we're going to do it probably on the exam. Hint, hint. I'm going to ask for a splash form, and here's the way to do it. First, we need to rename this thing. I'm going to right-click on the form itself, and I'm going to hit rename. which asks me what the name is going to be. Please, whatever you do, don't wipe out the CS. That would be very bad, right? So I'm going to go here and call this splashform, splashform.cs, and press enter. It's going to ask me, are you sure? Do you want to propagate these changes throughout the entire document? Yes, I do. Absolutely. Click yes here. And your renaming is done. There you go. My task is done. I can go home now because I just said, taught you how to rename. Really, it's that easy. So it's not that difficult. I want to make this form a splash form. Okay, and we're going to introduce some new controls to make this happen. One, a splash form is going to come up. It's going to wait a second and then go away, right? Splash form. And it's going to wait, let's say, 3 seconds and go away. How do I get that? How do I do that, right? And it's got to look like a splash form. It's got to be there's going to be some kind of image or something that I'm going to put up here. And I really don't need this whole X box, the X, the maximize and minimize. I don't need a title bar at all, in fact, right? So there's a way of doing that in the form itself. And I'm going to go to my properties for my splash form. And I'm going to just hide my Solution Explorer here for a second, so I just see my properties. And if you look here, what I've got my form border style, right? So here's my form border style. Notice that it says sizable. There is none, right? That's a good one to start off with. If I click none, bam, there's my splash form starting to form, right? So that's one thing I can do. The other thing I always would like to do is make sure that my auto scale mode is not set to font. Please change this. Set it to none. Don't auto scale at all, because if you auto scale mode is font, then your form will look different on my machine and someone else's machine and everybody else. This way we've got one standard size for everything. By the way, auto scale mode font is good when you know that you want to adapt it to different font sizes. Yes?
Sorry, I'm just a little curious. Is there a way to make it so that the text in a form scales to the size of the form?
Yes, there is. There's different ways of doing it. You can do it with code. You can do it with, there's not a way of doing it automatically, because what this auto scale mode means is whatever the font size, it'll rescale the form according to the font, right? So my font size is big, my form will be big. And to show you that, if I went to font again, which is what it was, and then pull down my toolbox here, right? Here's my toolbox. And let's say, for example, I want to change the font size for my entire form to 20, right? Because my auto scale mode font is on, and I changed my font itself from Microsoft Sans 7. And if I go to Lucida Sans, let's say we're going to change the type. So I'm just going to type Lucida. Okay, there's Lucida Sans. And I'm going to change that to like 20 and press OK. My form will grow immensely.
3 times.
Yeah, and which I don't want, right? So I don't want this. And now if you look down here, because my auto scale mode is font, if I take this away and make it none, right, now it's too late, right, to go back to normal. But I could, manually change it back down to what it was, right? So now it's 1805 by set, like it's really massive, right? And it did that because it's auto scaled, right? So let's put it back down to what it should be. And again, it's going to be longer than it is tall, or wider than it is tall. So let's make it like, I don't know, 640 by, let's say, well, maybe more, maybe 800 by 300 or something like that. And again, you can make your form look like whatever you want. Now I've set it to 20. That means anything I drag and drop into this form will be 20 size, right? So I mean, that's the advantage of doing that. So if I take a button or some kind of label, which we're going to do like kind of this label for now, we can also use a picture in the background. So here's my label. Notice that's automatically 20 point and Lucida Sans, right? So I don't have to set the font for each individual control by hand. I can just do it like this. So now this is we'll call this the welcome label. We'll call it welcome label. And we did this kind of hello world already, so I can't make it a hello label. It's too late for that in the course. And we'll just call this welcome. We can also welcome to the calculator or whatever you want to say. There's my welcome. Maybe we have room for welcome to the calculator. To the calculator.
Can we define a custom fonts?
Yes, there's some plugins for that as well. But typically what you do is you use system fonts for that.
But I can add a font into the system font.
Yes, the problem with it is if I don't have it in my system I'll see gobbledygook. Right? So please use standard fonts as much as possible. The Citizen should be standard in most Windows installations. And you could make it, and I recommend this as well, if you're making images and stuff like that, then you embed the font in the images so it doesn't have to scale and all that kind of stuff. It just saves a lot of problems. Okay, so here's my welcome to calculator, but this is a really boring background. And I want to make my background, I don't know, let's make it a different color, right? So for background color, it's back color. That's back color property. We can change this instead of control. Notice I can go to web colors if I really want to and make it something else. Maybe like a kind of a warm blue. Not too warm. There we go, deep sky blue, sure. All right, that's the background color of my font. Let's undo that one. I don't like that change. But I meant the form to be the back color. That would be nice. Try that again. So I want to go to this one, and let's make it so that some not quite as light as that. Maybe dodge or that's okay. That's fine. Now notice there's a problem here. What's the problem? Why would I not like this? And this is from just a UI perspective.
Yeah, blue on black. That's like
it's really hard to see, right? Contrast is really tight. So whenever you have dark colors on dark, you want to try and make your font lighter. You know, at least brighter, if you will. You can change the background color. That would be the foreground color, right? So fore color for the font. So I'm clicking on the actual label. And right now you can see that the fore color is black. And I want to change it to white, right? So again, I can go to web colors white, which is fine. It's just a simple way to do that. That looks a little better, right? It's a little bit more legible is what we say, right? And from a font style perspective, if you really want to go, you can go here and click font style. For example, bold, I can make it true. So I'm going to make it kind of a little bit nicer. And again, maybe I want to kind of reset the middle approximately.
there's a function for that.
There is. There's all kinds of stuff for here. So, and notice that I've got my little splash screen, right? So I want it to start first. I want my splash screen to start first, and I want afterwards, I want it to launch my calculator afterwards. How do I make it so that my splash screen starts first? What do you think?
I think we just put it first in the main program.
You're right. In the main program is where it's going to go. You're dead right, right? So if I go over here, I'm just going to undo this. So here, we're instead of saying new calculator form, we're going to say new splash form, right? There's my splash form. And if I save this, and if I run my code, right, you're going to see it's going to top the top left, right? Because I didn't change anything. There it is. That's the standard position. And you know what? There's no way I can close this thing because I don't have a close button, right? The only way I can do that is Alt F4, or I can click this little button here. So I got to do something about that. I want it to auto close on its own, right? I want it to auto close the form and open up the new one.
There's you can define it on event form load.
It's all kind. I'm going to show you, right? Let me show you how it's done, right? So there's that way we can do that too. But one thing I don't like about my form, and I've asked you to do this again as well, if I go back to properties here, but again, there's many ways to approach it, like you said. I want to definitely put this in the default start position, right? So if you notice the where it's going to start, the actual form now that I'm looking at, instead of the start position being window default location, I want to make it so that it is center screen, right? Because it's a splash screen, right? By the way, you can add transparency to your splash screen with different PNG images, PNG images. You can do all kinds of stuff to make it look like it's a really cool splash screen in the background. Notice that my text is form 1. Now it's not going to show up, but you know I'm a stickler. I'm going to probably say splash screen, splash form. It's never going to show up. This is just what would be on the title bar if I had a title bar, right? So that's what it would be normally. Okay, so I've got this thing, and I want it to wait 3 seconds, and then I want it to. Do I want it to close? There's different functions. There's a close and a hide, right? Close and a hide. What do you think close does? I know it's kind of simple, but what do you think close does? It terminates the application, actually, if it's the first form, right? So if I do a form.close, that form is gone, and the application closes if it's the only form in the application, if it's the first form, right? If I do a hide, though, it doesn't get rid of the form. It just puts it in the background, right? And that's what we want to do here. Now, there's different approaches to doing this. You can actually have the form, launch the other form, and then this can close, and one cannot be dependent on the other one. We're learning how to walk before we fly, okay? One thing at a time. So how do we do that? First of all, there is a neat control over here on the left, and I want you to search for it, called the timer control, right? Here's my timer control. It's under components, right? Timer. Now, it's not a control that you're going to visibly see on the form. It's not a visual control. It's a control which is actually adding some functionality to the form. So I want you to drag and drop the timer onto the form itself, anywhere on the form. What it does is in the bottom, in the gutter, it creates a timer object, a timer object. Now, this is a really cool timer object. If you actually click on it, you can see on the right, the name is timer1, right? This is not a really great name, right? Maybe like splashform timer, you know, something like that would be a better name, right? So I'm going to change timer, right? And it's going to change the name. I changed the name because I want to be able to remember what it is in my code, and it has to be contextual, all right? Okay, notice that it says enabled is equal to false, and my interval is 100. What do you think interval is? It's a what? The splash time? Okay, but what's 100? 100 what? Milliseconds, right? And there's 1,000 milliseconds every second. So if we want it to last 3 seconds, it's got to be 3,000 milliseconds, right? So we change that to 3,000 milliseconds. Now, here's the thing. Is this going to trigger? Right? Well, it actually creates an event, right? This thing, we want to respond to an event. And the event that we're going to respond to is called tick, the tick event, right? The easiest way to do that is to double click the timer control, and it's going to create the event handler for me, right? Automatically. So double click, and all of a sudden, bam, here's the splashform timer tick event, right? Yay! Really big long name, but we know what it is, right? Okay, here's what's going to happen. So when the timer triggers, when it triggers this event, it's going to trigger it on every interval. So if you want this to trigger every 3 seconds, leave it alone, right? Except for, if you look at the splashform itself, and if I look at properties, is it enabled by default? No. You need to enable the timer. So we need to change this to true. Okay, so the timer's enabled. As soon as the form is created, the timer's enabled. It's going to go for 3 seconds, and then it's going to go to that event. What I want is for in that event, in my splash form, I want when it hits the event to be disabled. That's the first thing. The timer must be disabled, because if you don't disable it, it's going to trigger every 3 seconds, forever. Now, this is great if you're creating a game loop. If I'm going to create a game loop and I want to run some game 60 frames a second, right? So 60 times a second, how many milliseconds am I going to put approximately in my interval? 16.6666, whatever it is, non-terminating repeat. Yes. And so every approximately 16 milliseconds, it's going to trigger that fast. That's really, really fast. Faster than your eye can see, faster than we can tell. It's going to look like nothing's happening. But you can actually create frame-based animation just with a timer, where you can move a control every frame. Every time it triggers, you can use frame-based animation to move something around the screen if you really want to, and create special effects. For our little example here, not a great use when we're making user interfaces for business, right? We don't use little kind of flashy things or whatever. If you want to make a game, though, you could totally do it with this timer control, and it's very nice and easy. Think about, we would rename this thing, of course, instead of splashform timer, we would call it game loop. And the game loop would be triggered all the time. And this little form would be sitting in the background invisible, and I would just keep using this as a form that I would use it just as a timer itself, independent of everything else. All right, but for now, that's not what we want. We want to do this. I want to say something like this. Why am I using the this keyword? I could use splashform timer, but I refer to this particular object. This dot enabled is equal to false. So as soon as my tick event triggers, I'm going to disable my timer, right? So again, my tick event is going to trigger every 3 seconds, but I only want it to work once. So once it's triggered, I want to hide my form. I don't want to close my form, right? How does this work? I'm going to say this dot hide, right? There's this dot hide and this dot show and this dot all kinds of stuff, right? We're going to talk about. But this dot hide and this dot close are the most common functions, right? What this is going to do is it's going to disable the ticker. It's going to hide the form, and then it's done. It's going to be just put away in the background. Now you might say, hold on a second. That means like we're managing a form that's kind of in the background. Well, guess what your phone does? Right? Your phone does the exact same stuff. Your phone does not close anything. It just keeps it open in the background. And what we do is we switch from one screen to the other. So don't worry about it. It's not a lot of memory. And if I was to run this thing, right, because we're starting a splash form, it would go 1, 2, 3 seconds, and then it would go away. Okay, that's how it would work. Splash screen. Okay, we conquered this part. We got this part. But now I want to bring up the other form. How do I do it? It really depends. There's a couple of approaches. And then we'll talk about the most common approaches. All right? I could instantiate an object of type calculator form here, right? And the problem with this approach, I'm talking about problems and solutions. I'm going to go to the drawing board for a second. Let me just go to the board, right? And I'm doing this because I want to describe it not just with words, but I also wanted to use some visual language to talk about it, right? So let's suppose we have a form. I'm using this as my whiteboard, so please forgive me, right? One day when actually it's supposed to do what it's supposed to do. Yeah. And it always does this for me. I have to kind of reset or redo the windows and default layout. Here we go. All right, so I go to here, and what I want to do is I want to set up my window. So this is my form, right? So this is my form, and this, we'll call this the form program. Okay, so this class is called program, right? So the way it works right now, and I'm just going to kind of select OK, right? With this one, is I'm going to put this this is the program class, right? And what the program class does, and I'm going to just a few layers here for a second. What the program class does is it instantiates, if you look closely at it, in this new form. And the default form name is, we'll just call it form 1. Right? So here's my form 1. So it instantiates this form. So what it does is inside the program itself, right, with a new keyword, it's going to instantiate form 1. And I mean create another object of this form type. Right? That's what it is. So program links to form 1 and creates a new form object from the program itself. And if you want to see that in code, if you go back to program, you can see that I'm creating an anonymous object, right? There's no name for this object. It's just called new splash form. Why is it anonymous? Because I don't have a named function associated or a name anything in here. There's no variable that I can refer back to. If there's no variable I can refer back to that's not in the public space, in the space of the application, I can't access that form. So once splash form is created, I have no control over it. It's anonymous, anonymously working. And that's great for a single form application. But we're making multi-form applications, right? So one solution could be I could create a form that I want to access in the namespace. In the namespace COMP1004 Winter 2017 Lesson 4. I could do that by creating a public static object that's inside of my class, right? Let me show you that option. So for me to do this, I have to do something like this. I have to go public here. Remember I talk about this being as the default is private, public here. And then what I want to do is inside here, I want to do something like this, public static. And then I want to call this something like, I don't know, my splash form. Right? And maybe make it so it's capital M. Is equal to a new splash form, right? And of course, I need to put the type over here, which would be splash form, because it's the type, right? And that completes the new way of doing things. I could put it like this, and then this would be a public member where I'm actually creating, I don't have to create it like this. I can just instantiate it by doing, just to give you an idea, this, well, there's no this. It would be program. I'd have to use the name of the code dot my splash form, right? Notice I have to use the name of the program because there is no object being created. This is a static class, right? So I can't say this. I can't use the this keyword at all. It doesn't apply to a static class, right? So program dot my splash form, and of course I want to call this form into being, right? And oh man, well, what I really want to say is refer to it. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's what this does. I could do it this way, right? And if I was to save my code and run it, you're going to see that there should be no appreciable difference. Except I have a problem. And where is this problem? It says application set compatible text rendering default to false. And the reason why it does this is because before I've set this up and I've set up my public static splash form, it messes me up if I was to do it this way, right? So we don't do it here. This is the other way to do it. I do it like this, and I come inside here, inside the body of my main, and underneath this piece here, I do the last piece, which is my program dot my splashform. And by the way, I still have to put that declaration up here. Splashform is in the name, which is my splashform. This is the long, convoluted way of doing it, by the way. My splashform. I do it here is equal to a new splashform object. And then down here, right, I'm calling program.my splashform, and now I'm getting an error. It says program does not contain a definition from my splashform. Well, hold on a second. Isn't that this? Public static splashform, my splashform? I missed? I missed what? Oh, that's bad.
No, my splash, there is mistaken the last one, yeah.
That would be very bad, right? Splash, if I can spell. Splat. There we go. All right, so that should work, right? And this should work now. If I run this thing, notice I've declared it two places. I've declared it here. So declared public static form. And this is application wide. Actually, an application global. That's what it is, right? It's available across my application, right? You might need these, by the way, application globals. We'll talk about how to do that later. And then down in here, what I'm doing is I'm initializing. Initialize the splash form. All right, that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm setting it down here in my application run to the first form that's running. So instead of making it a anonymous object, right? Now I have control. I can always refer to this as program.mySplashForm, right? If I really want to. Let's see how this works. If I start it, and if everything works now, it goes 1, 2, 3, and then goes away, right? And now it's not closing, right? Because I'm not closing my form, but I also have access to reference this form. And then from here, when it closes, I could reference the other form that I have. For example, my calculator. I could do that here. So I'll make another public option up here. Watch. So they're not related. They're not dependent on each other. Again, declare public static form, which is going to be my, which again is my application a global, but it's going to be, instead of my splash form, it's going to be my calculator form, right? And the way I do that is I'm going to say public static, right? Calculator form. There it is. My calculator, or whatever, something else. Just using a my, just a. All right, I've done this here, but it hasn't been instantiated, and it's a good idea to instantiate all my forms in my initializer, so I might as well do the same thing. I don't have to use it. My calculator is equal to new calculator form, right? Oops. There we go. So I've instantiated two forms here. Splash form, and we'll say calculator form. Okay. And this can certainly be one way of doing it, right? Now, let me just put this up on GitHub. So if I went too fast, you have it, right? So again, I'm going to go to, for GitHub, I need to go to Team Explorer. And if you don't look at changes, notice that I made all these changes. Now, Git, by default, GitHub, the Git that's built into Visual Studio creates 2 commits or 1 commit that does your git ignore file, and there's another file that it creates as well. And once it does those 2 files, that's the first commit. But what I want to do is another commit. And this is really when I've made my changes. I've added a splash form to my page. I could have done other commits by now. I'll say added splash form to project. All right, that's what I've done. And I'm going to commit all. This is local commit locally, right? And now I want to go to home. And if you have, if I go to sync, if you have the GitHub extension for Visual Studio, and again, I'm going to show this one more time for people who are new to the course. If you go to extension tools, extensions and updates, and if I look for Git, to see that this is the one I want, GitHub extension for Visual Studio. If it's not installed, you got to look online, and you got to put the same thing in, Git. And if you see it, that's inside of your, if it's online, then you have to download it. You have to click on this and click download. And then when it's done, it'll have this little green check mark. Okay, when you have that, and you go to Team Explorer, this publish to GitHub option will appear. If you don't have that, this publish to GitHub option will not appear, right? I want to click publish to GitHub. And it's going to ask me for the name of my, my project, and it can ask me which association, which organization. I want to put it in Georgian College. There it is. And then click publish. And if I do everything correctly, it's going to take my files and put it on Georgian College in that organization on GitHub. And if you look at GitHub now, again, this is all review from what we've already done. I'll go to GitHub and then / Georgian College. There it is. When I go up there, I should have that new repository right here. Right here it is. Right, and I have 3 commits. Right, I have added git ignore and git attributes files. I have it added project files. These 2 things are like an initial commit, and then I have my commit. By the way, do I count these 2 files when you upload your assignment? Hell no. That's just like done automatically for Microsoft. I count those 2 as 1, right? And that's just you putting it up on GitHub. If that's all you did, you get 2 marks off automatically, if that's all you did. If you work with GitHub and add more commits, and it makes sense, if you just don't say something like, change my comments, you know, and some other minor things that you would do just, you know, more from an aesthetics perspective, you know, that kind of thing. Then, again, you haven't really worked with GitHub. It's mostly used for backup. And if you saw that as something that I've commented on, it's because of that. Because you really didn't use GitHub for development. You use it as backup only. So this is my second commit. I'm really not there yet. I wouldn't give myself a mark at this point. Are the other 2 marks? Okay, I've just done a few commits. Not really that great. I'm not finished either, right? But I've got it up on GitHub now. Great. All right, so let's test it. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to run this thing, and you know you can see that it still runs. Always test something when you implement a new feature. Great, fantastic. And now what I want to do is in my splashform, this is the option I have. I can say something like program.calculatorform, right? .show. So I hide this one and show the other one like this. So again, program.myCalculator.show. So the show form actually displays the form. I've instantiated it already in the global application namespace, right? So it's already been instantiated. All that work has already been done. And now all I'm doing is showing or hiding, right? Now this is a great way of preloading all your forms that you're going to use, right? And only displaying the ones that you want, okay? This is not the common approach, though, I have to tell you, right? It's not the common approach. And we got to talk about the more common approach that's more complex, that you're going to go to the job and go, well, Tom said to make it on the global namespace. And then they're going to say, no, we don't like anything on the global namespace. Please don't do that. And then you're going to say, God, how do I do it then? Right? Let's talk about this one first, though. So I'm going to go, yeah. And then 1, 2, 3, and then bam. It comes up with that one. Right? So that shows. But now, if I click this button, it's still going. Still going. Why? Because my originating form, the one that kicked off this application, is still open, right? Until I close that form off, right, it's not going to close my application. So what I want, and look, you can give me an error too. And the expected behavior that I want, because it says program.myCalculatorform.show, it says an unhandled exception of type system object disposed exception is happened. So I disposed of my issue, but the problem is when I close that button, right? I'm not closing the application. I'm just closing my form because there's nothing else in there. It's giving me an issue. That's what that button does, that X button, right? So I want to handle that problem, right? So when I click the X, what is it doing? Well,
I mean, it's just closing the form.
In our case, you're right. That's the expected behavior. It should close the program, right? But how do I make it happen? So I'm going to go through this example first, and then I'll show you the other one. How do I close this form off? Well, you know that a couple things. One, my calculator form itself has the X button. And the X button, whenever I click that X button, it's going to raise an event. That's what we're going to call it, raise an event, right? It's going to emit something. It's going to go beep, 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 close, right? Something like that's going to happen. And then we're going to be listening for it and go, okay, I'm hearing closing. I got to do something. I got to respond to the closing event, right? Because in the application lifecycle of window forms, different things happen, right? And if you want to see what the application lifecycle looks like for the form, again, if I click on this and go to properties, and I can get rid of Team Explorer for a second, right? Or Solution Explorer. And if you look here, the lightning bolt itself are all of the events. The default event for this form is the load event. So when the form loads, okay. And now they're going to say, what's the difference between load, right? And there's other events in there as well. Well, let's take a look at some other events, like, is there some kind of closed event? You know, again, well, there is. If you go down to form, there's form closed and form closing. Form closing, right? So that's, something's happening. My form is about to close, right? And I can say something like, are you sure, right? If you're sure, then I'll close the form down. I'll let it close. If you're not sure, then I'll cancel the closing event. I can do that too, right? It's all event handling. Let's take a look and see how this works. So I'm going to double click on my form closing event handler to create this event handler inside my calculator form, right? So now I have a way of handling the closing sequence, right? And what I want to do is do something like this. For now, I want just to close off the application, right? So how would I do that? Well, application.exit, right, would be the easier way to think about it, right? All intuitive, right? I mean, Microsoft, what they try and do is make the keywords make sense, especially when you're using a form. So if you want to close down a form, you can close. If you want to hide a form, you can hide. And if you want to close the application, application exit. Let's see if this works first of all. What was that? I'll get to that. First things first. So first, this should exit the application. This should. And there's a reason why it may not. And I want you to think about this for a second. Right? So start. 1, 2, 3. Calculator. I do my calculations and close the form off, and no error is raised. Right? It closes off the application and disposes of my forms nicely. That's what application exit does. So we've gone full cycle here, but I want to be able to check to make sure that, well, you know, maybe we don't want the form to close. Maybe I clicked the X by accident, right? So I want that to stop. I want to give the user a chance to stop that from happening, right? Now remember, we're going to get an event that's going to be raised. The event is going to be stored in the E, this little form closing event argument. That's where the event is being stored, right? And I can choose to cancel the event, right? For example, I can do something like e.cancel, right? E.cancel means cancel that event. Don't close this event anymore, right? That kind of thing. Don't do the form closing, right? And in fact, show my form again, right? I want that form to come up, right? But I want to do an if statement. I want to say something like this. If my little message box is going to come up and the person says, yes, I want to close or cancel, is there some kind of message box that I can create that can do that stuff for me? So let's do it one step at a time. Let's look at the message box class.show. And if I do that, I can see that I have 21 different constructor signatures. So it's an overloaded constructor. And one of them that shows here is messagebox.show and the string of text. Let's keep going down here to see what the other options are. So messagebox.show, the owner and the string text. Message box with 2 strings, the caption and whatever is inside the message box. We need that one for sure. So I need those 2. So string is going to say something like, are you, oops, I meant to do this. Are you sure, right? That would be the actual, you know, are you sure you want to close? And then the caption would be something like confirm, right? That I can do. I can kind of pull up this message box, and then, you know, that's one thing I can do. Then I can ask for some message box buttons. So if I start typing message box buttons, it's an enumeration that allows me to actually make any button combination that I want, or make my own too. So there is yes, no, retry, cancel, yes, no, cancel, okay, cancel, right? I think okay, cancel might be the right thing. There's okay, cancel. That'll give me the button that says okay, cancel, right? Now, if I press space, I also have the option to do a message box icon, right? Where my message box icon could be the following: error, exclamation, hand, information, none, question, stop, or warning. Let's make it a warning. Are you sure you want to close? We're just going to put that little symbol inside my message box, right? So you can customize your message box. Okay, cool. Well, the great thing about message box, if I hover over it, it returns, right, a dialog result, right? The dialog result is returned, right, from the message box. And dialog result is an object that it returns. Okay, so let's do one of these. So before my message box, and I'll break up message box so you can see it. I'm just going to put them down here for you, not because for any other reason, just so you can see this thing. And what I want to do in the single line is do something like this: dialog result, we'll call it result, is equal to message box.show. What this is going to do is do the following: display the message box with the buttons in my message, right? And then return a result, whatever I put in, whether it's OK or cancel, and store it inside the result variable. Okay? The result variable is then going to be able to determine if I pressed OK or cancel. And depending on that, if my result is OK, right, then I should be able to continue closing with no problem. However, if my result is cancel, right, I want to e.cancel and then this.show, right? Let's show you that. Now, I'm going to do it the long way. I'm going to say if, and really what I want to test for is if it's cancel, right? I don't care about the other one. If it's OK, close, right? Let him keep doing what he's doing. And what that means is application exit shouldn't happen here, right? It should happen down here after the if statement, right? And I do that in the else. I'll say if result dot, if you notice it says, what I want to do is equal to, right, dialog result dot cancel, right? This is the syntax, okay? Don't worry, will you ever have to remember this on an exam? No, you can look it up, right? It's not like the exams aren't going to be closed book, they're going to be open book, which is getting bad. So if that's true, then, right, if it's cancel, then I want to do e.cancel. And I would definitely want to put in, and by the way, is it one of these, right? Or is it one of these? Is it just this? Can I just do that? Or can I do e.cancel? Is that enough? Can I do this? I want to cancel my event, right? So event.cancel, I want to cancel the event, right? Or is it e.cancel is equal to true, right? I want to cancel the event. Okay, then what I want to do is definitely go back to show this thing, this.show. Because it's going to be already closing it off. It's just about to close, and then I'm popping it back up, right? We'll see if we need this in a second. Else, if it's anything else, we just want an application close, right? So application.exit. It's like normal. Will this work? Let's see. First of all, does anyone not understand what I'm doing here? I'm creating a message box object. Message box has a few button options. I've used an enumeration. That's what it's called, an enumeration. With my message box icon is an enumeration. Message box buttons is an enumeration. It's built into the message box class that allows me to choose how the message box is going to look, right? That's what it's going to do, and how to respond. How does it respond? If it's got OK cancel buttons, and if I press the dialog, if my result is equal to cancel result, then cancel the closing and show my form, else close it. That's what it's going to do. But should I really do it this way? And we're going to talk about this. Because if I do application exit, right, we'll see what it does. So run it. 1, 2, 3. Form. Close the form down. I want that message box to come up. Are you sure? With a little warning sign, right? And I say OK, right? It's going to, wait. It asked me twice. How come it asked me twice? I don't understand. It's the way I've done this, but it asked me twice. That shouldn't be. I shouldn't be asked twice to close off the application. Yeah. Let's do the next one. So I close it off, and I press cancel, and I close it off, and I press cancel. So that part works, right? Cancel works, but this part that doesn't work. How come it's giving me that again? Right? Well, this is okay, right? But application exit, it's going to do something, right? What is it going to do? It's going to try to close the form off, right? That's what it's going to try and do. It's going to try and close the form regardless of what I do else, right? Which is a problem, right? So this kind of syntax is nice, but I got to figure out how do I put this in place so that it doesn't ask me to close the form off again. What was that? Do while? I could do that. What's another option? Any other options? How about if I check for OK instead? If I press OK, application exit, otherwise, right? Otherwise cancel. Would that make anything difference? Let's try that. We'll swap these around. So we'll say instead of dialog result OK, remember this is the result you want most often, right? And you want to kind of do this. Will this change anything? Is this going to change anything if I press the order differently? Let's see. So I'm looking for the OK result. If it's an OK result, close the form down. Otherwise, cancel. Right? And 1, 2, 3. Hello, calculator. Close it off. OK. Oh, man. How can I fix that problem? Now, you're saying that you want to do something different, right? What else? Anybody else have another solution? Yes.
Can we just trigger application close event instead of closing?
Okay. So application.close. Right. So if I go close, the problem with application there is no close. How about you're thinking about this.close?
Yeah.
But this.close, the problem with it is, right, is that we have another form that's open, right? So if I do this, I need to close the other form too. What's that other form called? And is it not going to continue with the form closing anyway? Right? My form is going to close, right? So I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it close, right? I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to press OK. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to keep closing anyway. So I don't have to even do this because it's going to close, right? And then I just have to make sure before it closes, I want my splash screen. So I'm going to say program splash screen, my splash screen got closed. That's still open. I'm gonna have some error handling or whatever, right?
Wait. Hold on a second. The splash form, that's what's keeping it active in the first place, isn't it?
No, one does not depend on the other one. One just called the other one. I didn't instantiate that form from the splash form. My form was instantiated in program, right?
Okay.
Right here. So my program was instantiated right here. Nothing to do with splash form, right? These are independent at this point. And that's why it's more complex. Let me run it and show you. So 1, 2, 3. Let's see what the problem I get now. Close this off. I say, yes, I'm sure. Close. And then we're good. Why are we good? Because when I go to my calculator form, I want to clean up my stuff. And we're already closing. So my this.close has already been triggered, right? If it's already been triggered, that means my form is going to close. And if my form closes and the other form closes, my application is exited. If I try an application exit, the problem with that is it's going to trigger the closing event again and ask me again. It's going to keep triggering that close event and asking me for at least twice, like I showed you, right? Now, there's other ways around this. And this is a really ugly piece of code. How can I make this much nicer? Is there a way of making it nicer? Do I really need the show event? First of all, let's see if I need this part. So I'm just going to dumb it down, get rid of the show. I'm just going to cancel the event, see if that does it enough. And there's a method to my madness. Bear with me while I do this, right? Da-da-da. 1, 2, 3. Show the calculator. Close it off. I say cancel. Still good. I don't need that line of code. And because I don't, I can get rid of it. Now I'm reducing. Now I have a form that I can reduce even further. What's the form that I want to use here that looks, I can do it in 1 line instead of 8 lines. There's a form there's something that we talked about before in other classes most likely. You know what it's actually called an operator. What is it called? The ternary operator, right? The ternary operator. The ternary operator, it uses instead of if and else, the question mark and the dot and the colon. And you guys may have seen that in other languages. But the way it works is like this. So depending on the result, if the result is positive, then give me my positive result, which is this. Right? I want this to happen. So I'm going to take this, cut it, and put it there. Right? Otherwise, that's the colon, right? Do this, right? That's what I want to happen. Can this work this way for the ternary operator? Can I do that? A nice idea. I want to do it this way. But there's a problem to this whole situation, right? Usually the ternary operator returns something to a value that I'm checking. For example, I say, if, this value is equal to blah, blah, then this value is equal to true or false, right? This isn't the case here. I've got two different conditions. One where I'm actually doing something and the other one where I'm canceling. So the ternary operator in this case won't work. I'm just pointing it out because you've seen the form and some people might say, hey, Tom, use the ternary operator because you only have, it's an if-else. Doesn't always work. We're going to talk about the ternary operator later on, but I can clean up my code a little bit, right? I can make some changes to my code, right? Oops. Any questions around this? This is form 1. Okay, this is the first way of doing it. And now this is recorded on video, so now I'm going to do the other way. Okay? Here's the other way. Instead of instantiating my form from my program, and you're going to say, hold on, this makes no sense. It makes no sense what you're doing, right? Instead of instantiating my form, right, from my program, I'm going to instantiate my calculator form from my splash form, right? Then I can do it here. And I'm definitely not going to mention it up here. So I'm going to take these away, right? So this is not going to happen here. So now I only have my splash form, right? And in my splash form, this is the second way of doing it. Again, this is all recorded for you. In my splash form, notice that I can't do program.myCalculatorForm.show. What I need to do here is instantiate a different object. I'm going to have to do something like this. So I'm going to say something like calculatorform is equal to new calculator form, right? I do it here inside my splash form, okay? And then what I do is something like this. I say lowercase calculator form, right, the lowercase one, dot show, right? This is exactly what the other thing will do. It'll show the calculator form. However, when it comes to closing now, when I go back to my calculator form, I can't do this. My splash, but I could do splashform.close. I could do that because that's the parent, right? This is one way I could do it. I can close my splash form, and this may work the exact same way. Let's check and see if that's true. Because I'm closing, and if I close, then it's going to trigger the splash form to close. Let's see if that works or if it gives me an error. So 1, 2, 3, bam, it's going to show me my calculator form, same as I did before, right? And then I close. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Wait, it's going to give me more of them? What's going on here, right?
Every 3 seconds you're going to have more.
Why? I don't understand. Because, wait a minute, my splash form, which is this one right here, right? On tick, I disabled it, right? And then I'm going to show it, right? How come? How come it failed to not do this? It's going to keep showing my form every 3 seconds? Come on, I just disabled it. I said this enables equal to false. The what? Well, here's what's happening. My form is hiding, right? I guess it's all order stuff, right? So here, I'm going to kind of do this and put it up here, right? So I only do it once, right? And then what I want to do is I want to hide this and show this, but I'd rather do show this and hide that instead. Why? Because once I hide it, I have no control, and then my trigger, my effects might be really weird. Let's see if that makes any difference. And you might think, well, I don't understand why it's making a difference. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see, I'll move it out of the way. Let's make another one. Oh, how come? Anyone else have the reason why this is happening? Well, the method is going to be called forever. Every 3 seconds, it's going to make a new calculator, right? But why? Look, I'm disabling, yeah? Yes. I'm hiding it, but I can't close it. I can't close it, right? If I close this form, this is enabled is equal to false. I've disabled this splash form tick timer, right? Is that what's being disabled? No, the form is being disabled. I need to set my timer, this event here. I need that to be set to false, right? So what is it called? How do you do that? It's splashform timer. It was always wrong, but it worked before because the way we set up our form, right? So it didn't show up anymore. So splashform, right? Or this, sorry, dot splashform timer dot enabled is equal to false, right? That's what's got to be disabled. And then the rest is, as we say, perfect. 1, 2, 3 comes up, and now it won't create another one. Because the splash form timer, not this, that was an error, right? This is referring to the form itself, not the timer, right? Okay, so we're good there. I'm closing off. Are you sure? Yes, I am. And close. So that all works the same way. Okay, so 2 ways to do it. And I'm showing you both ways, but what's the bad thing about the second way? The first way was nice and independent, right? And like I said, you guys should know how to do that way. But the second way is the more common way, right? It's almost like one form creates the other form, creates the other form, creates the other form, creates the other form. What's a bad thing about that?
Doesn't that mean you can't close the other forms?
Unless I know the name, right? Or unless I have a reference. So how do I create a reference? I did it this way, and I'll let you go with this thought. How do I create a reference? I've got this splashform.cs, right? Here it is. And right now what I'm saying is I want to go to the actual program. I want to go to the program.mysplashform.close. I want to go to my parent. I want to go to my parent form somehow. Can I get to the parent easily? The answer is no, and it's not always reliable. So then, and this is where it gets convoluted, so please watch carefully. I need to create a reference to the parent form in this form. Watch. Like this. I need to go kind of say something like this. And it's of type, just bear with me. I got my operand 1 and operand 2. And at the top here, right, it's got to be public, right? So let's make it actually before everything else. And I could make it a getter setter, and I'll do that next day. Right? Here we go. So here is a public option, a public object, which I'm going to refer back to the previous form, which is called splash form. It's of type splash form because splash form is just an object that is a type, right? And I'm going to call it previous form. It can be called parent form or whatever. So now it's just a reference. There's nothing there. There's no container or whatever, right? But it's something that exists in this form when I instantiate it. Here's the problem now. If you don't know object-oriented design a little bit, it exists and it's pointing to some other form. Maybe it's been created, maybe it hasn't. We don't know at this point. There's no relation between one and the other, right? Well, how do I make it so that it knows? When I instantiate it here, right, where I say new calculator form, blah, blah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say calculator form dot previous form is equal to this. And what this does is it creates a reference to this form, right, to the form that's creating it. So now I have a way back because I have previous form as an object that I can refer back to the one that sent it to me, which is this. And this is what confuses people when they go back and forth. You need to know how to go traverse back and forth between forms, right, without just showing and hiding, right? And the way this is done is, so 1, here's steps before I let you go. 1, instantiate the next form, whatever that next form is, right? 2, pass a reference to the current form to the next form. And probably in some kind of public variable we call previous form. And it has to be, that previous form has to refer to this form's what we call shape, the shape of this form, which is, in this case, splash form. Once you've done this, then you can do whatever you want to do, right? Now, 3, inside the calculator form, right? You need to have some kind of, 3. Create, actually this probably would be 2. Create a reference, right, to the previous form. And usually it's of type whatever the previous form is that created it, right? So in this case, it's splash form. Do I really need to make it a reference to the previous form, or could I just make it of type form? If you think about it, because all forms derive from the superclass form, I can just make it form. I don't know what it is. It could be splash form. It could be any form. But all forms have a close method, right? All forms have a show method. It may not have the other stuff. I don't care about the other things. But it may not have. But now, in this case, I have more control because I know all the details. But I could replace this splash form with a form, right? Because it's the same thing. I don't know what it is. Some form that's going to make a reference to me. Close it off is what I'm going to do. And then down in here, inside the where I want to close, instead of doing my program my splash form.close, I could simply say something like this.previousform.close. Right? I have a reference to my previous form now passed into it from the other form. Now, if this is cyclical for you and it's kind of convoluted, we're going to see this format over and over again so you're comfortable with it. It won't be the first time or last time. And for now, I want you to be able to see it, recognize what we're doing. I'm going to do it every single time from this day forward. We're going to do this kind of stuff. So it's not going to be like the last time I'm going to show you and then somehow expect you to remember. All right? Let's test it to make sure it works. So 1, 2, 3, instantiate the new form. And if I close it off, right, are you sure it's going to close the entire application down? Just like before, right? However, if I didn't want to close and if I wanted to show the other form, right? If I didn't want to do this, I want to show the other form, I can just do the same thing. I can do something like this, dot previous form, dot show. Why is this bad? And what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen if in the previous form, right? What's going to happen in the previous form if I do this one again? Will it create another instance of my form? Right? Think about it, what it's doing. It's creating an instance. So this object lives, and now it's referring back to the parent form. And that parent form makes a new one. What's going to happen to this one? Is it going to be destroyed? Is it going to be another one there? I'm going to have a memory leak. What's going to happen? Right? Actually, nothing. It just gets destroyed right away and created. Let me show you. So my calculator form, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to close this off, and it's going to go back to my splash screen form. And then my splash screen form is going to instantiate this one again in 3 seconds, right? Where is it? I don't have a control to instantiate another one. I've gone back, and I've gone beyond the point where my ticker doesn't work anymore. I've disabled it, so therefore it's not going to spawn my new one. All right? Oh yeah, there's all kinds of switches I can turn on and off to make all the thing work. But I just want you to understand how this works, right? That's why I did this a little example. So this is the more complex example, right? I would say by far. Both of them have their issues. Both of them are complex. One of them creates, like the first example that I gave, created 2 independent forms that were created in the program driver class, right? And that seemed kind of easy. You launch one, and then you hide the other one and show the next one, right? And that's where we want to kind of take it, right? But I want you to understand this way because you're in the workplace and you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to go refer one form from another form and create it, right? And this is some of the most common ways. Depending on your employer, they may ask you to do it this way, right? Because they don't want too many public variables, right? Are we clear? You're probably not clear. And I know it's kind of weird. But this piece here that I've talked about today is for multi-form applications. We're going to get there. But the other thing I want you to understand is the way forms work. Next week, stay tuned because we're going to talk about all the controls that you need for your assignment number 2, right? And please be ready to show me your assignment number 2, your progress, so you can get that 2%. Okay? Any other questions before we go? I'm going to stick around outside if you have more questions, right? I won't I'll push it to get for sure. Yes. What? Yeah. Hold on a second. Oh, you want to see this, or you want to see the actual? Did I kill you yet? Splashform.cs. There it is. Did I kill you? Did this kill you?
No. Okay. I had a good question. Google Screencast, right?
Yeah.
When you're creating this video and live streaming it to YouTube,
yeah.
Does it allow you to?
Let me. Speaking of which. Okay, we'll see you next time.